Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from this book. It's called Africa, Amazing Africa, Country by Country. It's by Atinuke and has amazing illustrations by Muni Fedag. We're just going to read all the little descriptions of the countries because there's a lot to this book that's really, really incredible. You should really check it out. I found it at my library and I had to share it with you guys. Amazing. So starting with Southern Africa, we're going to look at Angola, Botswana, Eswatini, and Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. South Africa has long white beaches on the Indian and Atlantic Oceans, where people swim with whales and dolphins. Southern Africa has wide open savannas, where giraffes, zebras, and rhinos roam and where hunters used to stalk them. Southern Africa has the oldest desert in the world, where over millions of years, antelope, lions, elephants, and humans have learned to live. Southern Africa has modern cities with big banks, cutting-edge hospitals, huge museums, and busy nightclubs. Most Southern Africans have African ancestors, but some have ancestors from Europe or India. So Southern Africa is home to black people, white people, people of South Asian heritage, and people of mixed heritages. Starting with Angola. Angola's capital city, Luanda, is right on the beach, where skyscrapers overlook palm trees and big white yachts in the bay. In the offices, people are busy on their computers and cell phones, and on the streets, people are busy shouting their wares and honking their car horns. Outside the city is the rainforest, a place where the forest people tread silently with their spears and arrows, a place busy with butterflies, birds, monkeys, and lizards, a rainforest thick with trees that help our planet to breathe. Botswana. Botswana is rich in diamonds, rich in cattle, and rich in wildlife. It is home to millionaires, home to cattle herders, and home to hunter-gatherers. The millionaires want to dig up the land and mine it for diamonds. The cattle-loving people want the land free of predators so their cattle can graze safely. To them, cattle are riches. The nomadic San people do not care about diamonds or cattle. They want the land to stay wild and free, just like them. Eswatini. There's King Mswati down here. The king of Veswatini is the last king in Africa, and everyone in his country has to do what he says. The army, the police, and even the newspapers. King Mswati III has lots of cars, lots of palaces, and lots of wives. He's very, very rich, but his people are very poor, and they are not at all that happy about it. Lesotho. Lesotho is one of the highest countries in the world, so it is called the Kingdom in the Sky. Some places there can be reached only on foot or in small planes. It is snowy in winter and the skiing is great, but it's also very cold, so blankets are important. And people don't just sleep under blankets, they also wear them during the day. Now there are factories in Lesotho making clothes for international clothing companies, and people wear coats and jackets just as often as they wear their traditional blankets. The dog outside is barking. But, nope, it didn't stop. It's just there. Malawi. Malawi is famous for its woven baskets and carved wooden masks. Now it's also known for its car fuel. Gasoline is expensive in Malawi, so to make cars cheaper to run, Malawians experimented with mixing ethanol made from sugarcane or corn with gasoline. Then they invented a kit that lets cars use ethanol alone. It's a very cheap way to get around. Go Mozambique. Football, known as soccer in the United States, is Mozambique's most popular sport. In cities, people crowd into football stadiums to watch their favorite teams play. In towns, children who are lucky enough practice on football pitches, and those who aren't play in the streets. In villages, children play on any bit of flat ground. And if there's not a real football, they'll make one out of rags or plastic bags or bark or rubber bands or anything, really. Namibia. In Namibia, there's a desert that runs right into the Atlantic Ocean, and there you'll find some of the biggest sand dunes on the planet. These pink and orange dunes are so enormous that people surf down them. The beaches are foggy because the hot desert air hits the cold Atlantic Ocean air and turns into fog. The fog prevents ships from seeing the jagged rocks along Namibia's coastline, so more than 1,000 shipwrecks are scattered on those foggy beaches, along with the bones of whales and seals. No wonder it's called the Skeleton Coast. So pretty. South Africa. South Africa is called the Rainbow Nation because of its mix of black people, white people, and people of South Asian descent. For many years, some of the white people, who decided they were better than anyone else, kept jobs, land, and education just for themselves. Other people, like Nelson Mandela, fought for everybody to be considered equal. Now that time is over, and South Africans are working together for peace. It is one of Africa's most modern countries. There are big cities like Johannesburg and Cape Town, with football stadiums, shopping malls, mansions, and poor neighborhoods, where all sorts of different people live and work and play. Zambia. Lots of people in Zambia carry things on their heads, baskets, buckets, and even sacks. It's much easier to carry heavy things with our strong neck muscles than with our skinny arms. Some people can do this without using their hands to hold things steady, even when they are running or riding motorbikes. It's beautiful and it's skillful, and it's done all over Africa. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has incredible structures. It has modern cities full of skyscrapers and sculptures. It has the ancient ruined city of Great Zimbabwe. And most incredible of all, it has the balancing rocks of Matobo National Park. Some of these are rocks the size of cars, balanced on rocks the size of houses, balanced on rocks the size of football stadiums. Others are massive rocks the size of trucks, balanced on rocks the size of cars, balanced on rocks the size of shopping carts. These rocks have not wobbled for millions of years, so people not only climb them, but they actually build houses in their shade. Next we have East Africa. We'll be looking at Comoros, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Madagascar. Can you see Madagascar? There we go. Madagascar, Mauritius, Rwanda, Seychelles, Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. And don't worry, we're going to do Burundi in another section. They didn't forget Burundi. That was my concern when I first read this. East Africa is famous for its huge savannas, where Africa's most popular animals live. Elephants, lions, giraffes, zebras, and lots more. Out of those savannas rise Africa's tallest mountains, and there you'll find its deepest lakes and most powerful waterfalls. East Africa is the part of Africa closest to Asia. For more than 1,000 years, ships have come across the Indian Ocean from Asia, bringing tea, spices, silk, and gunpowder to swap for East African ebony, ivory, gold, salt, and labor. The Arab nations were also involved in the trade. The East African language of Swahili has lots of Asian and Arabic words from centuries of East African, Asian, and Arabic peoples doing business together. The Swahili city-states were thriving hundreds of years before Europeans knew that Africa or even America existed. Swahili is still the most common language in East Africa, and East Africa is still a melting pot of many different cultures, traditions, and religions. Yes, okay. Comoros is first. There are hundreds of mosques, or Muslim houses of worship, on the islands of Comoros. Some are big and grand, while others are small and shabby. Most children go to Quranic schools where they learn to read and write in flowing Arabic script and study the Quran, Islam's holy book. Beautiful scented flowers grow all over the islands. They are used to make sweet-smelling oils that are sold around the world to make perfumes. Some of the oils are even considered holy. Djibouti. For over 3,500 years, ships from Africa and Asia and Europe have stopped in Djibouti to trade. Even today, the capital city is one of the busiest ports in the world, where container ships refuel and change cargo. Outside the city, the land is mostly desert, where nomads live. People say it is like the moon, with white salt lakes and cracked earth and tall rocky pillars that puff out steam. You can see the Red Sea trade heading to the Suez Canal. Eritrea. Eritrea is home to many nomadic peoples who live in tents made of woven mats that let in cool breezes. Eritrea's nomads are constantly on the move, chasing the rains that fill drinking wells and water the grass that their goats, camels, and cattle need to thrive. Nomads depend on their herds for meat and milk, as the land is too dry to grow food. The nomadic way of life is the oldest human lifestyle. But nomads are modern now too. Some use GPS and cell phone apps to check where the rain and the best grass are. Ethiopia. Ethiopia was one of the first Christian countries in the world, maybe the first. In Christianity's early days, Christians were often attacked for their beliefs, so many churches in Ethiopia were built in safe places in the high mountains, places that were hard to get to. Some of the churches are carved into underground rocks, and others built so high up in cliffs that you have to climb to reach them. Inside, they are painted with huge, beautiful, brightly colored murals of Christian saints, kings, apostles, and angels. Next we have Kenya. Kenya is famous for its lions, elephants, giraffes, zebras, rhinoceroses, and hippopotamuses. But its city life is as wild and wonderful as its wildlife. In the crowded streets of the capital, Nairobi, people of African, Indian, Chinese, Arabic, and European descent hustle and bustle in and out of shopping malls, jumping on and off the colorful buses, chatting into their phones, or doing their online banking. Next is Madagascar. Madagascar is an island that broke away from Africa and into the Indian Ocean 88 million years ago. There are 200,000 species of animals there, and about 80% of them cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. There are chameleons as big as cats, geckos that look like dead leaves, and frogs the color of tomatoes. Next is Mauritius. Mauritius is the only African country where Hinduism is the main religion. Around half of all Mauritians are Hindu. The others are mainly Christians or Muslim. Hinduism is an Indian religion. Hindus worship lots of different gods in beautiful golden temples. Mauritian money is called the rupee, just as it is in India. This is because most people in Mauritius are descended from Indian immigrants. The rest are from Africa, China, or Europe. And they are all immigrants too, because nobody lived on the island at all until 1683. Next is Rwanda. The name Rwanda means land of 1,000 hills. It is a tiny country high up in the mountains that has almost no flat places. The roads go either up, 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 or down, down, down. The hills and mountains of Rwanda are farmed to grow tea and coffee that are sold all over the world. It's hard to grow things on steep slopes, so the farmers cut flat fields into the mountains that look like giant green curving steps. And we have Seychelles. Seychelles is a country made up of 115 islands. They're all full of beautiful birds, astonishing animals, and peculiar plants. Rare black parrots and giant tortoises, trees with fruit like jellyfish, and the biggest nuts in the world. Luckily, Seychelles has the smallest population in Africa, so there's plenty of room for the birds, animals, and plants. In fact, more than half of the islands have been made into nature reserves. Then we have Somalia. Somali people love poetry. Once they recited poetry as they herded their flocks on land and fished on the ocean. But war, drought, and famine came, and big foreign fishing trawlers that scooped up all the fish. Now some of those herders and fishermen make a living as pirates, chasing huge container ships in their little speedboats. But Somali poets are their nation's true heroes. They're still creating poetry. Next is South Sudan. South Sudan is a very traditional country where the Dinka and Nuer people grow their own food and herd fierce longhorned cattle. Many children learn at home instead of going to school. Girls learn how to grow food and boys learn how to look after the cattle. Boys are given a young bull of their own. The boys and their bulls grow up together and are even called by the same name. Like these are what these big old moo-moos really look like. Big old horns. Next is Sudan. Sudan is one of the hottest and driest countries in the world. As camels can go months without drinking, they used to be the most popular mode of transport in Sudan before cars were invented. There are still camel markets everywhere, and camel races, which are loud and colorful and fun. Watch out, though. Grumpy camels spit down on people from their great height, and their burps and farts can go on for 2 minutes. But the people in Sudan are some of the friendliest in the world. Next is Tanzania. Tanzania is a country in 2 parts, the mainland of Tanganyika and the island of Zanzibar. The mainland is famous for the millions of animals that travel up its enormous Serengeti savanna each year, following the rain that ripens the grass. They have to cross rivers full of hungry crocodiles lying in wait, so not all of them make it. Zanzibar is famous for its busy markets, which are rich with the scents of spices and the voices of merchants from all around the world. We have Uganda. Trucks, buses, taxis, and matatu minibuses are everywhere in Uganda. Matatu drivers don't set off until the bus is overflowing, and they stop to drop passengers off whenever one shouts, "Stop." Old people squash together on seats with their shopping bags, and young people hang out windows clutching their college books and laughing into their phones. Chickens and goats are squeezed in too, and roof racks groan under bags and packages and huge bunches of bananas. Moving on to West Africa, we're going to look at Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Kotivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, and Guinea-Bissau. We have Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. In the north of West Africa lies the Sahara. In the south are the windy beaches of the Atlantic Ocean. In between is the starry Sahel, where the desert meets the grassy savannas. The savannas merge into dark rainforests, which melt into the wet mangrove swamps. The busy, crowded cities rock to the rhythms of high life and hip-hop, because whether they are blue-eyed desert nomads or dark black city dwellers, West Africans love music. Wherever you go, men wear long, flowing, embroidered robes over loose, baggy trousers, when they are not wearing blue jeans. Once, camels carried West African gold across the Sahara to the Middle East, and some of the world's first universities were founded in the region. Now, West African companies sell diamonds and oil, and highly educated West African doctors, lawyers, and engineers work all over the world. I'm going to start in Benin. Maybe we'll come back another day and read all the little extras, but tonight we're just sticking to the facts. The traditional religion Vodun is one of Benin's official religions. It is celebrated with festivals of drumming and dancing, where the ancestors and the traditional gods are worshipped. Vodun was taken to the Americas by enslaved Africans hundreds of years ago and is one of Haiti's official religions. Next is Burkina Faso. The name Burkina Faso means land of the honest people. It had a great president, Thomas Sankara, who said, "We must choose either champagne for a few or safe drinking water for all." So you won't see as many fancy buildings and fancy cars in Burkina Faso as you will in the rest of West Africa. Here, bikes are the favorite way to get around, no matter what you're carrying or how many of you there are. Next is Cabo Verde. Around 20 million years ago, volcanoes started erupting in the Atlantic Ocean. When the volcanoes cooled down after 12 million years, the molten lava hardened into an archipelago of islands off the coast of West Africa, now called Cabo Verde. Sea levels around the world are rising because of climate change, and one day the beautiful islands of Cabo Verde may disappear back under the sea. Kotivoire is next. Elephants. The name Kotivoire means Ivory Coast. The name comes from the huge ivory tusks of the elephants that once lived there. These big, beautiful elephants roamed with their families, making sure their babies always walked safely in the middle of the herd. When foreigners first arrived in Côte d'Ivoire, they killed as many of the elephants as they could and sold their tusks. Now more elephants are dying as their rainforest homes are destroyed, and many more are still being poached. The big, loving West African forest elephants are now nearly extinct. And next we have the Gambia. This tiny country runs along the banks of the river Gambia, and there live not only Gambian people but also Gambian birds, nearly 600 different kinds. There are herons, pelicans, and flamingos, guinea fowl, falcons, and hoopoes. I think that's how you say that, hoopoes. Paradise flycatchers, sunbirds, and drongos, and tiny, tiny honey guides which communicate with humans. Next is Ghana. Ghana has the biggest market in the whole of West Africa. Thousands and thousands of people jostle their way through the walkways, buying and selling clothes and fruit, computers and cloth, fried fish or dried fish and shoes, and everything else under the hot, hot sun. There are no set prices in an African market. The trader tells you what they want you to pay, and it's up to you to argue the price down. This is called haggling. It's fast and furious and full of jokes. Next is Guinea. Like people in many parts of Africa, people in Guinea love buying bright and beautiful cloth in the markets. There are so many colors and patterns to choose from. There's cloth printed with animals, cloth printed with flowers, and cloth printed with famous presidents, expensive cars, and cell phones. People make the cloth into fabulous new outfits for work and for weddings. And then we have Guinea-Bissau. Babies are tied onto their mothers' backs with cloth everywhere in Guinea-Bissau. Tiny little newborn babies, small babies sucking their thumbs, big babies wearing shoes, all are carried by Mama when she is cooking or carrying water or riding to the bank on the back of a motorbike taxi. And if Mom is resting or in the office, well, there's always a sibling or a cousin to strap baby onto. I like that picture too. Next is Liberia. Liberia is Africa's oldest democratic nation and was never conquered by Europeans. It was established by African Americans nearly 200 years ago. For centuries, African people had been kidnapped by Europeans and forced to work in America, Europe, and the Caribbean in slavery. Years later, a group returned to Africa and started their own country, Liberia, whose name means Land of Freedom. Next is Mali. Mali is a desert country, one of the hottest in the world. People wear billowing tunics and turbans to protect their skin from the scorching sun. Buildings are built with thick clay bricks to keep them cool and tiny windows to keep out the sun. There are whole cities made of clay in Mali. Clay houses, clay mosques, clay shops, and clay schools. Next is Niger. In Niger, most people are farmers or cattle herders. The farmers live in the wet south, where there is enough rain to grow crops. The herders roam the dry north, where there is just enough grass to feed their goats and cattle and camels. Every year in the dry season, when the grass dries up, the herders travel south. The farmers have harvested their crops by then, and the herds can graze the stubble in the fields. By the time they leave, the fields are fertilized with cattle poop, and both farmers and herders are happy. We have Nigeria. The city of Lagos in Nigeria is the biggest, busiest city in the whole of Africa. There are so many millions of cars that often the traffic is completely jammed for hours. So the quickest way to get around the city is on motorbike taxis. They can weave between cars, whether the cars are stuck or speeding. They're so dangerous they've been banned on some roads, but not everyone in Lagos obeys the rules. Next is Senegal. In Senegal, music is everywhere. It pours from open city windows, gets drummed up on village corners, and is clapped and sung in every school. Senegalese music is so infectious that it is played all over the world. American musicians who invented hip-hop and rap were heavily influenced by it. And so were jazz, blues, and rock and roll musicians. Here we have Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, there are glass skyscrapers, marble mansions, concrete apartments, and houses made of cardboard boxes and corrugated iron. There are people who own expensive cars and people who do not even own shoes. There are families who fly abroad for vacations and families who have to work every day of the year, including their children who work in farms or factories or collecting trash on the streets for recycling. And then Togo. Food is sold on every street corner in Togo. Corn is roasted on little fires, and spicy chicken is grilled on sticks for people to buy. In roadside stores, customers eat peanut stew, fried yams, and shrimp at rickety plastic tables. Old men sit under trees and buy the kola nuts they love so much, from girls carrying them in baskets on their heads. All right, our next region is Central Africa. We will be looking at Burundi, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, there too, Gabon, the Republic of the Congo, and Sao Tome and Principe. Let's read about it. The second biggest rainforest in the world covers Central Africa. It is loud with monkeys, parrots, and trillions of insects, but it might not be there for long. The rainforest people were the first people to live in Central Africa. They lived singing in the forest and hunting with spears and arrows. Then came those whose lifestyles now threaten the rainforest, tall farmers from West Africa who cleared the forests for their fields, nomadic herders from East Africa with cattle and goats that eat young trees, and Europeans greedy for oil, timber, minerals, and crops. Some Central Africans have kept traditional lifestyles, and others have chosen modern lives. But whether they are billionaires or beggars, bankers or farmers, oil rig workers or hunters, they all call Central Africa home. Right, so we have Burundi. In Burundi, boys are taught to play huge drums by their fathers. It takes years and years of practice to be a drummer. You have to be able to dance, do acrobatics, and march balancing a huge drum on your head while drumming wildly at the same time. The rhythms of Burundi drumming are powerful enough to make the whole world want to dance. Cameroon. In Cameroon, as all over Africa, some children are driven to school by their parents and play computer games when they get home. Other children have to walk to school no matter how far it is. Some of them wake at 4 a.m. and walk a long way to school, creeping past wild animals. Afterward, they work in the fields before doing their homework, and they don't have any devices to play on. But no matter how hard it is, children in Cameroon are determined to go to school. They want the chance to become engineers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, and scientists. All working hard in school. Next is the Central African Republic. The Central African Republic is hundreds of miles from the sea on a huge high plateau covered with grassy savannas and thick forests. Through the forests, millions of butterflies flutter like flowery jewels. Over the savanna, the skies are lit with stars as big and bright as diamonds. And under the Central African Republic soil lies more treasure: gold, uranium, oil, and diamonds. Next we have Chad. Most people in Chad speak 2, 3, 4, or 5 languages. More than 120 languages in total are spoken there, so no one can speak them all. To make sure people can understand one another, there are 2 official languages that everyone learns: Arabic and French. But people in Chad don't speak them exactly the way they're spoken in the rest of the world. They have their own Chadian versions. Language is like nature. It evolves. Here's the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Here's the beautiful picture down here on the Congo River. A big volcano. There are so many rivers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo that it is easier and quicker to get around by boat than by car. Children paddle to school in canoes. Business people go to work in speedboats. And everyone goes to visit family and friends using the ferries that steam up and down the Congo River. Sometimes on trips that can take weeks and weeks and weeks. People sleep and cook and even shop on board. Just watch out for crocodiles. Here's Equatorial Guinea. In Equatorial Guinea, it can rain for months and months and months. Then comes the dry season when it won't rain for months and months and months. The sun gets hotter, the rivers dry up, and the ground turns to dust. When the rainy season comes back, children dance in the warm, fat, splashing raindrops. Everybody is glad that the grass and fields will turn green again, except people whose cars get stuck in the mud. Here's Gabon. In Gabon, the dark rainforest stretches right down to the beaches of the wild Atlantic Ocean, and there both forest animals and ocean animals come out to play. Sea turtles wander in the shade of the trees and lay their eggs in the sand. Elephants splash with their babies in the shallows, and hippos surf the waves. The Republic of the Congo. Lake Tele in the Congo is where the Mokele Mbembe lives. You haven't heard of the Mokele Mbembe? It's as big as a dinosaur and as scary as a monster, and it hides in the lake like a crocodile. You don't believe me? Oh, well, not everybody believes in the Mokele Mbembe, and not everybody believes in its cousin, the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, either. And Sao Tome and Principe. Sao Tome and Principe is a country made up of 2 islands and 4 islets in the Atlantic Ocean. Rainforests cover the island's mountains, turning them emerald green. Fishermen drop their nets into crystal clear blue water. Tourists lie on the white sandy beaches, and farmers grow cocoa to make the chocolate and sweet things we love to eat so much. And lastly, we're going to explore North Africa. We have Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, Tunisia, and Western Sahara. North Africa is desert country, and the desert is called the Sahara. The Sahara is harder to cross than the Mediterranean Sea. This means that North African customs and traditions have more in common with those in the Middle East and Europe than with those in the rest of Africa. That's because for millennia the Middle East and Europe were easier to get to. The Romans, Greeks, and Turks all conquered North Africa and made it part of their empires. And then Morocco conquered southern Europe and made it part of its huge North African empire. The few North Africans who did manage to cross the Sahara before the days of plains were nomadic Berber merchants, the original North African people, with their long lines of camels carrying salt and gold. Wherever they stopped, people came to buy and sell goods. These trading places became huge markets, and those markets became the great North African cities of today. You can still buy anything at those markets, from a computer chip to a fossil the size of a car. In fact, it is said that if you cannot buy something in the markets of North Africa, then you cannot buy it anywhere in the world. Here is Algeria. In Algeria, women work everywhere, in shops, schools, offices, businesses, hospitals, courts, and mosques. More than half of all university students are women, and many doctors, scientists, lawyers, and judges are women too. Cave paintings in the Algerian desert show people hunting the herds of animals that lived there thousands of years ago, when the Sahara was lush, rich savanna. But now most people live on the coast, where the climate's just like California's, because the rest of the country's either snowy mountains or scorching desert. Next is Egypt. Egypt is probably the most well-known African country. Tourists love visiting its famous pyramids and taking boat rides down the magnificent Nile River, where the biggest crocodiles in Africa live. The river runs through the capital city of Cairo. It's a gigantic city with one of the best universities and the strongest army in the whole of Africa. And here's Libya. The Libyan desert, which is part of the Sahara, is one of the hottest and driest in the world. Sometimes 10, 20, or even 30 years go by without rain. Even the Berbers and the desert-loving Bedouins will not go into parts of it. They prefer their beautiful cities built around oases. The most beautiful Berber city is Ghadames, pearl of the desert. Once only men walked its winding streets, while women visited one another in their connected roof gardens. Now men and women walk together in Libyan cities and sit together in cafes, drinking coffee and laughing with their children. We have Mauritania. Mauritania stretches deep into the Sahara Desert and down into land called the Sahel. Sahel means shoreline in Arabic. The Sahel is the southern shoreline of the Sahara, a desert as wide as an ocean. It is dry and dusty, with thorny trees and prickly bushes and spiky grasses. Luckily, Mauritania is full of oases too, where springs of clean water bubble up from the dry ground, and where trees, farms, and whole towns can grow. And we have Morocco. In the heart of every North African city is a Medina, the old town. In the heart of the Medina is the souk, the ancient market, where the traders who crisscrossed the Sahara on camelback sold their goods. The Medina in the Moroccan city of Marrakesh is surrounded by 12 miles of rosy pink walls. Spices, carpets, leather, gold, olives, and hundreds of other things are for sale in its souk district, just as they have been for thousands of years. Now there are watches, phones, and cameras too. Here is Tunisia. In Tunisia, beautiful golden-domed mosques, high spiky cathedrals, and cool tiled synagogues, where Muslim and Christian and Jewish people go to pray, crowd together. Along the shady streets, families sit in restaurants and cafes, eating their favorite foods. Some prefer fast food, while others enjoy traditional stews served with couscous and flatbread, but everyone loves to drink Tunisia's super sweet mint tea. And lastly, we have Western Sahara. Western Sahara is where the Sahrawi people live. They call their country the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. The Moroccan government took over Western Sahara in 1975, saying it was part of Morocco. The Sahrawi people are still fighting against this. They want to rule themselves. Once the Sahrawi men roamed with their herds looking for grass, while the women stayed at home in charge of the families, the finances, and the law. Now most Sahrawi people live in the refugee camps, waiting for the war to end. And that's the end of our book tonight. Wasn't it wonderful? And there's still so much more to explore in this book. Again, please check this out if you can find this book at bookstores or at your library. It's really, really wonderful. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a very good night. Good night.